being late on such a day. What were you thinking?
On my wedding day, as I was heading to the venue, I had to rush a pregnant woman who wasn't feeling well to the hospital. As a result, one of the main figures of the event, ended up being late. As we were about to start the delayed ceremony, my FIL, furious and shouting, approached us. "I'm so sorry. There was a pregnant lady on the way who wasn't feeling well."
Well, such a ridiculous lie. Even if it's true, you chose to prioritize some unknown woman over my daughter. You've brought shame upon us.
He grabbed my arm, trying to drag me to the ceremony hall. The staff tried to stop him, but he shrugged them off.
Dad, stop it. What are you doing?
I knew it. This guy is a stupid. The wedding is off. Go around and apologize to each guest.
When he appeared at the wedding venue, where the attendees were seated, and saw me being dragged along, everyone's eyes widened in surprise. Pushing me in front of his family's side, he yelled, "Kneel down and apologize now." It seemed like the situation wouldn't calm down unless I complied. Why has it come to this? Just as I was about to kneel, determined, and urgent news came in. Then his face turning pale, looked at me.
You couldn't possibly.
This was the very beginning of his downfall. My name is Michael Johnson, 33 years old. I'm a regular employee for a publishing house that mainly focuses on travel articles. The publishing industry is fiercely competitive, but since we're not a big player, the workplace can be quite calm depending on the season. As for me, I'm just an ordinary guy, neither particularly skilled at my job nor exceptionally talented. Just an average person. I finished the document you asked for. I submitted a freshly prepared interview plan to the section chief, who then tilted her head in confusion.
Johnson, this interview, it's meant to be for people who run local shops, right?
Oh, yes, you're right.
What if you ask for recommended stores and they just mention their own?
I messed up, she's right. I shouldn't have picked from the usual interview content so carelessly. I'm sorry, I'll rewrite it.
Well, this is actually good. If you ask for one more shop besides their own, you might find some secret spots.
Then she, holding back laughter, accepted my suggestion. It worked out in the end, but I need to be more careful. Seems like my colleagues overheard our conversation during break time. I unintentionally heard.
I laughed at that recommended stores interview by Johnson.
Me too. He always seems to miss something, doesn't he?
I know, right? He's kind of spacey.
He's like a little brother, makes you want to look out for him.
Apparently, it wasn't meant as criticism. Just as I was feeling relieved, I was called by our manager, Parker. Did I do something wrong? I wondered apprehensively as I went to see him. When Parker saw me, he smiled and beckoned me over.
Johnson, I hear you helped expedite the document submission to our client. The team lead had some high praise for you.
Oh, it's nothing really. I
talked to your team. They told me how you managed everyone's work schedules and checked all the documents, even while handling your own work.
It was just a bit of spare time I had. Nothing major.
But you know how much we value those little tasks, right? Oh, and I heard you updated the magazine's website too. Don't think nobody noticed. Everyone is aware of your hard work.
Oh, thank you very much. Receiving so much praise, I felt it would be rude to be too modest. I gratefully received his words of encouragement. I had intended to help reduce the workload of my kind colleagues without being too pushy. But indeed, it feels good to know that people are noticing.
By the way, would you mind if I introduce you at tomorrow's barbecue? You're good with people, and I'm sure they'll like you too.
Tomorrow, we have a barbecue planned with several publishing houses. It's a chance for building connections, exchanging information, and of course, I'm looking forward to some delicious meat. Arriving at the venue the next day, I was amazed. The scale was massive. It could easily have been called a party, organized by a major publishing house. It was incredibly lavish. The drinks offered a wide variety, enough to fill you up on their own. Joining my colleagues, we enjoyed the meal while being introduced to journalists, editors, and people from printing companies from other company. It was a good thing I brought a bunch of business cards just in case. Taking a break from building connections, everyone mingled and enjoyed their meals. That's when a certain woman caught my attention. A woman with a ponytail gathering used paper plates and taking them to the trash. Next, she seemed interested in the drink service area, wetting a cloth and wiping down tables nearby. She occasionally chatted and ate, so she didn't seem like part of the event staff. Excuse me. Seeing her moving around alone caught my attention, and I couldn't help but approach and speak to her.
Yes.
I'm Johnson from Cherry Blossom Travel Publishing. Then she took out a business card from her pocket and handed it to me. Seeing this, I hurriedly pulled out my business card.
Thank you for introducing yourself. I'm Lana Wyndham from Asna Beauty Publishing.
Her delicate peach-colored business card read, Editorial Department, Lana Wyndham. Asna Beauty Publishing is known for handling women's fashion and makeup magazines, primarily. Getting a business card from a sector I had little interaction with before made me somewhat nervous. No, that's not it. I did not approach her just to exchange business cards. You're from Asna Beauty Publishing, right? That means you're not one of the organizers, are you? I was just curious because you were cleaning up all by yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry for making you worry. I just can't stand to see things messy and end up tidying up without thinking.
She might be a neat freak or just well-raised. Even so, keeping up with the increasing mess in such a large venue must be tough. Still, it's impressive. It shows your consideration. You'd probably like to chat with others or take a break, right? I really respect people who can be considerate like this when no one else is looking.
It's kind of you to say that, but I'm just doing it because I like to.
I get that. I'm the type you can help but notice these things too. I've just had my fill and was thinking of getting a bit of movement. So, how about I help you out?
Well, if you say so.
We talked about our respective companies' specialty magazines, occasionally picking at meat and vegetables while cleaning up the venue. I had no expertise in women's specialty magazines, so her insights were very interesting. In turn, her father works in a travel agency, listened me intently. When the event wrapped up, we were invited to an after party. Wyndham and I, still having much to talk about, decided to join the after party together. It was at a pub, so the waitstaff cleared the dishes after we finished eating. Freed from cleaning duties, we laughed about it together. On the next workday, our little duo had become well known around the office. It seems my colleagues had spotted me talking amiably with a beautiful woman from another company. Was she an acquaintance of Johnson, or did he approach her at the venue? The office was abuzz with rumors and speculation. And as soon as I arrived at work, I was bombarded with questions from the curious female employees. It's not like that. I just wanted to talk.
You mean you fell in love at first sight?
Not like that. She was just tidying up the venue out of kindness, and I couldn't help but offer to assist.
I see. That's so typical of you. Helping out without even realizing it's like flirting.
So, what's the deal with her now?
What do you mean by deal? After the after party, she and I, having hit it off, exchanged personal contact information. She sent me a message, "Thank you for today," and I just replied, "Me too, you're welcome."
That's it. I can't believe it.
She reached out to you. You should keep the conversation going.
But it was just a professional interaction.
Really? Are you okay with that?
What else can I do?
So, you're saying this isn't with her?
Exactly. Unless you do something about it.
It was a work connection, so maybe that's all it should be. But maybe I want to keep in touch with her. On my way home from work, I sent a message to her personal contact. I asked, "Can we talk again sometime?" Half a month later, she and I started going out for meals frequently. We shared updates about our lives and discovered we both enjoyed watching movies. Realizing we hadn't seen a particular movie everyone was talking about, I boldly suggested, "How about we watch it together on our next day off?" When I shared this with my colleagues at work, the female employees praised me. After several dates, we gradually became what you could call a couple. A year later, I began calling her Lana, and she started calling me Michael. I proposed 2 years after we first met. It was at a restaurant near the venue where we had that barbecue. Lana and I had grown to trust each other completely and wanted to live our lives together. A month after the proposal, I was set to visit Lana's family home for the first time. I had been to her apartment several times, but never to her family home. Led by Lana, as we got out of the taxi, I couldn't believe my eyes. Before us was a mansion that looked like a castle. I knew Lana's father works in a travel agency, but only recently found out he is the CEO. Apprehensive, yet trying not to look intimidated, I walked into the house, where a housekeeper led us to the drawing room. There, I introduced myself as I handed over my business card to her parents. "I'm in a relationship with Lana. My name is Michael Johnson." Lana's father frowned as he looked at my card.
Cherry Blossom Travel Publishing. Isn't that one of our subcontractors?
Excuse me, I wondered if our main contractor had a travel agency. Maybe it was just something a regular employee like me wasn't aware of. I received Lana's father's business card, puzzled. Emerald Travel Agency.
That's right. We've given you quite a bit of business, haven't we?
We do have relationships with various travel agencies where we create plans based on their suggestions, feature them in our magazines, and promote the agencies within those pages. It's more of a cooperative company, a business partner relationship. It's different from being a subcontractor.
I never imagined Lana's partner would be an employee of a subcontractor company.
He seemed to be under the misconception that we were subcontractors. As the CEO, he might not be aware of the specific contracts with each company. I wanted to clear up the misunderstanding, but I thought it was not the right time to talk about work. So I just gave a wry smile. He then said to me,
I can't possibly approve of a marriage with an employee of a subcontractor.
"How can this be?"
Dad, what are you saying? It's my choice who I marry, right? Michael is a good person. Deciding based on the company is just.
No, it's not acceptable. Besides, his company is a useless company that doesn't even affect our performance. The reputation of the Wyndham family and Emerald Travel Agency is at stake.
That's not true. Last year, our travel magazine achieved the highest sales nationwide, and we have been favored by other travel agencies as well. I could tolerate any personal criticism, but I couldn't stay silent when our company was belittled. Everyone is kind and dedicated at work. When we achieved the top sales, we all congratulated each other and celebrated. It felt like a denial of everyone's efforts, and I couldn't help but speak up. Lana's father's expression soured even more at my rebuttal.
So what? You shouldn't be talking big as a subcontractor.
Basically, our companies are business partners, not just.
Still talking back, are you?
He stood up, ignoring his wife's attempts to calm him, and yelled,
Get out now. Your presence is unpleasant.
Realizing a sensible conversation was no longer possible, I decided to leave. That night, Lana apologized to me.
My dad has always been prideful. Ever since I was young, he's been telling me to marry someone of high status. I couldn't understand it, and I thought he would eventually calm down if I left him alone. But I never expected him to be so harsh. I'm really sorry.
It's not your fault, Lana. It was supposed to be a marriage announcement, but I also said unnecessary things.
Anyone would be hurt if something important to them was spoken about like that. You did nothing wrong. Michael, I'll try to persuade my father. Just give me some time.
Yay, thank you. Separate from the temporary hold on our wedding plans, a new problem emerged. Documents from Emerald Travel Agency weren't arriving. Despite reminders, their responses were non-committal, and they even started negotiating for a price increase. Even though their own inefficiencies were causing delays, they insisted that any late fees be our responsibility, leaving our accounting department scrambling to respond. Their sudden unreasonable behavior was surely because of me. I explained the situation to Parker. At first, he said, "That can't be. One person's displeasure can cause such an issue." But gradually, we received instructions to keep me out of the loop of the dealings, and I began to feel responsible. If Lana's father was spreading bad rumors about our company to other travel agencies and business partners, I was fearful of how far this harassment could spread. I couldn't let this company be put in jeopardy because of me. I decided to talk to Parker about it. I wondered if it would be better for the company if I were gone. To my surprise, he got unusually angry.
How can you say such thing? This is all that childish CEO's fault, not you. You've done nothing wrong. So don't talk like that. It's the responsibility of the higher-ups to handle these situations. Don't worry about anything, and keep up your good relationship with your fiancé.
Thank you very much.
Now, you have a meeting with Link Tours today, right? Switch gears and go handle that.
Yes, I'll do that. I'm a bit nervous though. My colleague said if this contract goes through, it could mean a profit of about $1 billion.
That's why we entrusted it to you. You're that valuable to us. Have confidence in yourself.
Yes, sir. I'm truly blessed with wonderful people around me. Not just Parker, but everyone at work has been supportive, not blaming me but expressing their concern. That's why I was so upset when our company was belittled. That day, I received a call from Lana. She had repeatedly persuaded her mother and somehow managed to get our marriage approved by force. Lana sounded exhausted over the phone. It must have been quite a struggle. I apologized and expressed my gratitude. I knew we weren't warmly welcomed, but I reminded myself that this was a matter between two of us. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The ceremony was scheduled for 12 p.m., and the bride and groom were to meet at the venue at 9 a.m. I texted Lana that I was leaving my house and headed to the station. Somehow, we made it to this day. Lana's family, the Wyndham family's guests, were incredibly numerous, befitting the daughter of a CEO. It feels like just yesterday when I saw Lana's face, laughing and saying, "We even narrowed it down about the guest list." The preparation truly flew by. Lana's mother was incredibly helpful, contacting family members and taking care of so many details. I don't know what we would have done without her. My colleagues at work were also constantly supportive. When I handed out the wedding invitations, they were as happy as if it was their own celebration. Reflecting on these days, I realized I could catch an earlier train than planned and was just about to reach the station when I saw a pregnant woman suddenly crouch down in front of me. "Hey, are you okay?" When I approached her, she was sweating on her forehead and seemed in pain. She didn't look like she could walk. Seeing a taxi at the station's rotary, I hurriedly hailed it and helped the woman get in. Despite her pain, she managed to hand me her hospital registration card. I told the driver the hospital's name and continued to hold her hand, offering encouragement. Upon arrival at the hospital, the attending doctor immediately tended to her. It seemed she had a sudden attack, possibly due to exhaustion. The doctor advised her to rest, and her complexion had somewhat improved. She would be staying in the hospital for observation, just to be safe.
Thank you so much for bringing me here. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there.
No, I'm just glad you're safe.
May I have your name, please? I'd like to properly thank you later.
I thought it wasn't a big deal, but I couldn't dismiss her request, so I handed her my business card and left the hospital. By that time, it was past 12:30 p.m. I had missed calls and worried messages from Lana on my phone. Jumping into a taxi, I called her and explained what had happened. Lana, sounding almost tearful, must have been really worried. She was relieved that both I and the pregnant woman were safe. Arriving at the wedding venue, feeling apologetic, I hurriedly got dressed. But by the time I was ready, it was already past 2 p.m. The staff at the venue, perhaps informed by someone, were all ready to welcome me warmly, except for one person, Lana's father.
Being late on such a day. What were you thinking?
He stormed over to us, who were about to start the delayed ceremony, yelling angrily, "I'm so sorry. On the way here, I encountered a pregnant woman who was unwell."
Well, such a ridiculous lie. Even if it were true, you prioritized some unknown woman over my daughter. You've brought shame upon us.
He grabbed my arm and tried to drag me to the ceremony site. Even when the staff attempted to intervene, he shook them off.
Stop it. Dad, what are you doing?
This guy is a stupid. The wedding is off. Go and apologize to each guest individually.
The guests, seated in the ceremony hall, were shocked to see Lana's father and me being dragged in, pushed in front of his family's side. He shouted at me, "Apologize now." What should I do? Will apologizing calm him down? No, he'll surely demand more. But if I don't comply, the situation won't settle. My best day turning into the worst. Finally, with no other option, I managed to squeeze out a feeble voice. I'm very sorry for what happened." Just as I was about to reluctantly utter my apologies, someone intervened.
Johnson, you don't need to do that. Stop it.
It was Parker. He stood next to me, pulling me to my feet.
What is the meaning of this?
Please stop this unnecessary insult. He is the main character today.
You're his boss, aren't you? Acting all high and mighty for a subcontractor.
Our company is a business partner of yours, not a subcontractor. And even if we were, this kind of attitude is unwarranted.
You better watch your mouth. With just a little pressure from our company, yours could.
Lana's father stepped forward, the situation becoming tense. And at that moment, suddenly, a young man appeared next to Lana's father.
President.
He seemed hurried, whispering something urgently into his ear. The person who stepped in amidst this situation must be some kind of secretary.
What?
Hearing the news, his face paled.
Don't say such foolish things. That can't be.
I just received the notification myself. Please, look at this.
He intently examined the phone screen shown by the secretary.
Link Tours has a major contract with Cherry Blossom Travel Publishing.
His words echoed throughout the venue, perhaps spoken without thought. Parker and I exchanged glances. Link Tours is now the leading travel company in the industry, offering a diverse range of plans both domestically and internationally.
It seems like there won't be any problem, even if the deal with Emerald Travel Company gets canceled.
Parker said that, then made a phone call to the company, presumably for confirmation. After a while, he hung up, looked at me, and smiled.
Johnson, you helped a pregnant woman on your way here, didn't you?
Yes.
That lady is apparently the president's daughter of Link Tours.
What?
Apparently, The president of Link Tours personally thanked our company earlier, and he knew your name from your sales efforts. They were about to finalize a contract with us, and your act of helping his daughter solidified his decision to work with us.
That's leaving me in astonishment. Parker confronts Lana's father.
That's how it is. I'd appreciate it if you refrained from any further harassment towards him.
Is that so? Your subordinates won't be able to get married at this rate.
I don't think that's related.
No, I won't tolerate a company employee like this being involved with my family.
Enough of this, Dad.
Lana, dressed in a wedding gown, stands in front of him.
I'm not a tool to uphold your dignity, Dad.
I don't remember saying such a thing.
You just tried to use me for negotiation, didn't you?
Well, that's...
I understand. It's natural to be cautious because of Dad's position as the CEO, and also because many people have approached us and betrayed us multiple times. But, you see,
Then she hold my arm.
he was the only one who didn't see me in that light. He's different from the people Dad dislikes. He's a kind person who offered to help when I was cleaning alone. He's even better at cleaning than I am.
Lana,
Do you think we understand that not everyone who approaches us has ulterior motives? It's time to stop acting like a child.
what are you saying to your parents?
Come on. It's getting embarrassing.
Lana's mother gave a sharp look. Seemingly unable to bear it any longer, she left the venue. Afterward, Lana and I apologized to everyone for causing trouble and had a redo of the wedding ceremony. While the logistics were chaotic, I believe it was a good ceremony that allowed us to reaffirm our bonds with people. Later on, Lana's father was dismissed from his position as the CEO due to losing business deals with us by personal reasons and having contracts terminated by other attendees. Additionally, it seems Lana's mother, who was fed up with his arrogant attitude, presented him with divorce papers. Lana, feeling sorry for both her parents, has been trying various means to mediate between them. She earnestly persuaded her mother, despite such parents, to spend time together and even created opportunities for the two of them. With the selfless kindness from the daughter he had tried to use as a tool, I can only hope that Lana's father will have a change of heart. Furthermore, later on, Smith, the president's daughter of Link Tours, came to express her gratitude with her newborn baby. The newborn baby was so adorable that it made me dream of having one someday. And then, after successfully achieving a major contract with Link Tours, I was promoted to department manager. I consulted Parker about my anxiety about gradually taking on the job of managing people.
That's right. It's good to have those concerns. It's much better than baselessly believing you can do it yourself. Failure is natural, so it's important to have an attitude of learning what to do and what not to do.
I see. Thank you very much.
What's that? No need to be formal.
You even protected me on my wedding day. I've been in your care for a long time. You're my role model.
I'm glad to hear that. So, become the kind of boss who can receive such compliments, all right?
Yes, I often hear people say Johnson is a good guy, but I don't have that intention myself. I acquired unselfish kindness by watching Parker. Just like I admired him, someday I want to become such a person. And if that person becomes someone admired by someone else again, wouldn't the world become a very kind place? It's not such a grand dream, but I hope that at least the people I'm connected to can feel that way. I'm a regular 33-year-old office worker. After graduating from Yale University, I landed a job at a major corporation headquartered in downtown New York. I've always been a bit timid, prone to getting easily upset over minor troubles, so my initial 3 years at the company were extremely difficult. I believe the reason I've managed to become a competent businessman is all thanks to the great bosses I've encountered so far. Especially after being assigned to the New York sales department at the age of 30, my boss, Thompson, seemed to take a special liking to me. Indeed, it was in this New York sales department that I met Mary Ann. Mary Ann, who worked in sales administration, and I got along well as we handled the same clients, and we got married when I was 30 and she was 32. Our marriage was smooth, and we were a happy couple. If anything, I was somewhat under her thumb, but I didn't mind and enjoyed everyday life. The only problem was that we were unable to have children. Having children was a dream of mine, and I had always expressed this to Mary Ann. Mary Ann, who loves children, agreed, and we tried many times as a couple, but we were never blessed with a child. Despite this, I believed I had been leading a relatively smooth and prosperous life. That is, until the end of last year. From around December of last year, my circumstances changed dramatically. I began having fights with Mary Ann, who I rarely argued with since we got married, almost every day. For some reason, Mary Ann started to be on the warpath with me. While Mary Ann is quite blunt unlike me, she hates illogical or unfair situations. In other words, she's not the type to lose her temper unreasonably or treat people differently based on her mood. However, Mary Ann had become a different person. She no longer smiled at all, and if I came home a little late, she would say, "Why are you coming home so late? You're having an affair, aren't you?" I'm going back to my parents' house, and she actually did. And if I sought intimacy at night, she would reject me, saying, "No way, don't touch me. It's disgusting." At first, I thought, well, people go through phases like this. Mary Ann had quit her job when we got married and was working part-time at a local supermarket during the day, so I figured that was probably a stressful work environment. Or maybe she was frustrated with herself for not getting pregnant, despite my constant desire for a child. So, I decided to let her do as she pleased for a while. However, instead of improving, the situation only got worse. Mary Ann's attitude became increasingly worse, and she often went back to her parents' house in New York. Even when I went to pick her up, I was turned away. I found myself raising my voice more and more, and our marital relationship had completely chilled. Then, in February of this year, Mary Ann presented me with divorce papers. When she coldly said, "It's a good thing we don't have children," I was furious for the first time in my life. I had reached the end of my patience with Mary Ann, who had not explained her disagreeable attitude no matter how much I asked, and I stamped the papers in a fit of anger. Thus, our marriage ended after 3 years. The troubles that had befallen me were not over. Thompson, who had always been attentive to me and often invited me to drinks or golf, suddenly became distant. I was having an experience I never wanted to have, where the attitude of someone I had been on good terms with changed dramatically for no apparent reason, and I was experiencing two of them at the same time. I was disliked by Thompson for some reason, who had the authority to make personnel decisions, and it led to my demotion. I was transferred to a sales office in rural Nebraska, which was referred to in the company as a retirement home or a place of exile. The transfer order came 2 days after my divorce from Mary Ann was finalized. Thus, my life in the country, plagued by anger and despair, began. One chilly day in April, I left the office at the end of the day and trudged toward my rented single-person apartment. A cold rain was falling outside, which further dampened my spirits. As I was walking down the road, I noticed a young woman sitting against a utility pole. I thought she might be drunk from a party or something, but as I got closer, I realized something was wrong. A smashed smartphone was lying next to her. With a bad feeling, I timidly looked at her face and found that she was unconscious with her eyes rolled back. I called out to her, "Are you okay?" But there was no response. Her smartphone was broken, and there was a high chance she couldn't call anyone for help. Judging the situation, I quickly called an ambulance. I held an umbrella over her head to keep it from getting wet while waiting for the ambulance to arrive, and I put my coat on her. The paramedics arrived, but there seemed to be no family or friends around, so I accompanied her. Once we arrived at the hospital and I was waiting in the waiting room, her doctor spotted me and informed me her condition has improved. She seemed to have passed out due to low blood pressure amid her unstable condition during her pregnancy. The baby is safe, too. He must have mistaken me for her spouse. Rather, I was relieved to find out she was pregnant and that I could respond early. Just as I was about to explain, "No, actually I'm not her family, just a passerby," a couple in their 60s ran up shouting, "Doctor, is the baby okay?" They were probably her parents. "Yes, both of them are safe. You must be relieved," the doctor replied, and the couple showed their relief and joy with their whole bodies. It seemed as if a thread of tension had been instantly released. She would have been in danger if she had been left out in the rain unconscious, but thanks to this man here who reported it quickly, the doctor said, and the couple came over to me, crying and thanking me.
"Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver."
And that's how I ended up being invited to the Reynolds family's house over the weekend. Sophie made a full recovery and had been discharged from the hospital, and they wanted to thank me as a family. Since I had no plans for the weekend, I decided to accept their invitation. I was astonished when I arrived at the address they gave me. The mansion that towered on a cliff, which I could barely see from my run-down apartment, was the Reynolds house. Nervously, I rang the intercom, and all 3 members of the Reynolds family came out to greet me. The second thing that blew me away that day was the lavish meal. Lobster, abalone, domestically produced branded beef, any high-quality ingredient you could name was laid out on the table. Are you sure about all this? I think it's more than my monthly salary." I asked, secretly wishing I had skipped meals for the past 3 days, to which the father replied, "You saved the life of our Sophie and her baby. It's only natural. We even thought about going out to buy a whole bluefin tuna." After that, a friendly conversation started, but I was about to be blown away for the 3rd time that day. Sophie's father was a renowned surgeon in America, and his name was known to everyone in the field of surgery. Like many talented and wealthy people, Sophie's father had a relaxed attitude toward life and was fundamentally warm to people. His wife and Sophie also touched my heart with the same warmth, and before I knew it, I was talking about Mary Ann. The fact that her attitude had suddenly changed even though we had been getting along, the fact that I still didn't know why, and the fact that I couldn't completely hate Mary Ann. The father seemed truly sorry for me. With his large hands, he patted my shoulder and said, "There must be some reason, but it's a shame to choose to divorce a kind young man like you. But cheer up. This is a rural area, but the air and food are delicious, and it's a perfect place to heal your heart." I felt a little better. After enjoying the melt-in-your-mouth delicious food, I decided to leave the mansion. We still haven't thanked you enough, so if you ever need anything, feel free to come and see us. The couple, who were in high spirits from the wine, saw me off. Sophie said she would walk part of the way home with me, so we walked together for a while.
But I don't know if it's my place to ask, but I'm really curious about what happened to Mary Ann.
I know, right? I can't think of anything. I wish there was a way to peek into Mary Ann's head. I've thought about that many times.
About that?
Sophie added.
We can't see inside her head, but couldn't we find out what she was interested in at that time?
Huh?
You know, her internet search history. If she hasn't separated her account from yours, that is.
I was taken aback. That's right. Marian always used my account to search because she thought logging out was a hassle. It's not cool to check my ex-wife's search history, but I'll look into it.
That's not uncool. You're a hero, Steve.
Please let me thank you again, Sophie said and went home. I ran back to my apartment at full speed. Why hadn't I thought of it sooner? As soon as I got into the room, I checked the internet search history. It started around the end of last year, when Mary Ann started acting strange. Checking my past records, I was struck dumb. It was as if time had frozen in place. And then, without thinking, I bolted out of my apartment. By the time I reached Mary Ann's childhood home in New York, it was late into the night. After a bit of hesitation, I pressed the intercom. The air was clear and the stars were clearly visible, but my heart was filled with an even darker cloud than this morning. After a while, Mary Ann came out of the house. She was trying to look displeased, but I could tell she was bittersweet, maybe even happy. Why didn't I notice? In hindsight, Mary Ann's unhappy face was somewhat unnatural. And seeing Mary Ann's thin figure confirmed that my assumptions were correct. "Mary Ann, do you have cancer?" Mary Ann couldn't hold back her tears and broke down on the spot. She had found out she had cancer during a checkup at the end of last year. The type of cancer that is difficult to remove with surgery. Her chances of conceiving were significantly reduced, and that she couldn't bring herself to tell me, who had been longing for a child. Even so, I wanted you to tell me the truth, not choosing to break up, but to want to fight this together. I said,
"But I wanted you to be happy. You're so kind and love children, the type who should become a father. I thought you should have children with someone else, not with me who can't give birth."
She replied. I hugged Mary Ann. It felt like it had been a long time. Mary Ann didn't resist and sobbed in my chest. Then I left New York on the first flight the next morning and returned to my transfer location. Instead of going back to my house, I went straight to the mansion on the cliff. When I rang the doorbell, Sophie and her father welcomed me again with a smile.
"What's up? Did you forget something?"
"No." I deeply bowed my head to Sophie's father on the spot. "Sir, I beg you, please introduce me to the best doctor you know." I woke up in the gentle early summer sunlight. Today was Monday, a day I had to go to work. I quietly got out of bed, went out on the balcony, and bathed in the morning sun of the city. 5 years had passed since the divorce fiasco with Mary Ann. Sophie's father accepted my desperate plea and introduced me to a doctor who he said was the only one who could match him. It was a difficult operation, but all the cancer that had been eating away at Mary Ann's body was gone. After the surgery, we immediately remarried. During our separation, we had both realized, more than we could stand, that we were irreplaceable parts of each other's lives. Even after that, Sophie's father helped me for a year. He introduced me to several CEOs he knew, presenting them as new business prospects for me. Thanks to Sophie's father's connections, I was able to achieve some of the top sales figures nationwide. As a result, I was able to return to New York in a year. As I expected, Mary Ann was the one who requested my demotion to Thompson. Since we had many common acquaintances in New York, she feared that news of her having cancer would leak from somewhere. Unable to turn down Mary Ann's desperate plea, and yet feeling guilty towards me, he seemed to have acted awkwardly. Thompson kept apologizing to me, but now that I think about it, my life drastically changed because of that transfer, and it wasn't a bad experience after all. As I was thinking about that, Mary Ann woke up with a bad head, but she smiled brightly. "Good morning. Want me to make coffee?"
Yes, please. Oh, make it decaf.
Sure. I'm truly glad to be able to have such casual exchanges. Glancing at the clock, I realized that more time had passed than I thought. I need to start preparing. No time to dawdle. I began getting ready in a hurry, yet quietly, so as not to wake our sweet child, sleeping peacefully in the bedroom. When I was 5 years old, my father passed away in an accident. Ever since then, it was my mother who raised my sister and me, all on her own. However, my mother also passed away from illness when I was 18. Since then, my sister and I have been living by relying on each other and getting help from our relatives. My sister, 2 years younger than me, is cheerful, friendly, kind to everyone, and always surrounded by people. Even after graduating from high school and starting to work, I was often cheered up by my sister's warm personality. My sister got married when she was 24. She married her boyfriend whom she had been dating since high school, and a year later, they were blessed with a daughter named Hannah. Despite being tossed around by childcare, she was always looking forward to documenting Hannah's growth with her camera, which was her hobby. On the other hand, I had a girlfriend in high school, but we quickly broke up. I'm shy and slow to make a move, so even if I'm interested in a woman, I can't bring myself to approach her. And since then, I've had a hard time finding a girlfriend. After graduating from high school and starting to work, I was busy dealing with the tasks at hand. Perhaps because of that, I am now able to enjoy my work at the current company. Let's just say I haven't had a girlfriend because I haven't had good luck so far. I work at a company that deals with baby products, and I'm involved in the development of new products in the product development department. When I first joined the company, I was assigned to the sales department. I used to visit the stores of our company's main clients, study our products, and work hard to contribute to the sales. However, after Hannah was born, I started thinking about what I could do to make childcare a little easier. Around that time, there was a competition within the company to solicit ideas for new products, and I decided to apply, and I was surprised to win. I got involved in the development as is, and I learned the joy and difficulty of manufacturing. I wanted to be more involved, so I requested a transfer to the product development department, and that's where I am now. For a while after transferring to the product development department, I was often working overtime due to unfamiliar tasks. The person who kindly supported me during that time was a female employee named Samantha, who was 2 years younger. Despite her younger age, Samantha is a respected figure in the product development department. She was involved in the development of a portable baby chair, which has now become a hit product of the company, and she even received the President's Award that year. Despite her achievements, Samantha, who is capable of detailed consideration for others, has many secret fans not only in the department but also in the company. Actually, I also secretly admire her, but with my personality, of course, I haven't been able to make a move. For me, my current pleasure is to see my niece Hannah. My sister and her husband live in a suburb relatively close to the house where I live alone. Worried about me, who tends to be casual about my diet when I'm alone, my sister often contacted me to come over for dinner. My sister and her husband, who always welcomed me warmly. Hannah, who was initially shy and cried when she saw me, has completely warmed up to me as she has grown. Wanting to see Hannah's happy face, I enjoy visiting my sister's house with donuts that she loves and little toys as gifts. To my sister, who looks apologetically and says, "You didn't have to bring anything," I smile and reply, "It's a pleasure for me." The time spent with Hannah's smile and interacting with my sister and her husband is precious to me. My sister used to say that she wanted me to experience the joy of having a family. "Because you're so shy, I'll introduce you to someone next time. I already have someone in mind," she used to say enthusiastically. But I had no idea at the time that such a thing would happen before that promise was fulfilled. That day the weather was bad, and it had been pouring rain since morning. As usual, I went to work and was attending a department meeting from 10 a.m. There was a call on my office cell phone from the General Affairs Department, and when I moved from the conference room to the hallway to answer it, "Can I connect you to a call from the police?" I was told. Wondering what had happened, I nervously had them connect me. I was told that my sister and her husband had been in a car accident and that they were in a critical condition and unconscious, and I was asked to come to the hospital immediately. I was in a state of shock from the sudden news and rushed to the hospital. My sister had been talking about wanting to go out and buy a surprise gift for Hannah's upcoming 5th birthday. I had received a message in the morning saying that they were going to buy it together because they both managed to take a day off, even though I had offered to take out my car. Perhaps the unfamiliar driving and the poor visibility due to the rain that had been falling since morning had caused the accident. I prayed as I headed to the hospital to see my sister and her husband. When I arrived at the hospital, it was too late for my sister and her husband, who would never open their eyes again. I couldn't accept the sight in front of me, with the image of the two smiling faces that I had just seen a few days ago deeply etched in my mind. Next to me, a little girl named Hannah, brought here by a relative, was crying.
"Mama, Papa, what's happened? Why won't they wake up?"
I didn't know what to say to Hannah, who was letting large tears spill over her cheeks. All I could do was hug her. After my sister and her husband's funeral was over, the gathered relatives began to discuss who would take care of Hannah.
"She's only 5, the po thing."
"We already have 3 kids."
No one seemed willing to offer to take in Hannah. Hannah, on the other hand, was clutching the hem of my shirt anxiously. Seeing her sad face, I made a decision. I'll take responsibility. I'll raise Hannah. Of course, I would be lying if I said I was totally okay with my decision. But I didn't want to see Hannah's sad face anymore, and out of all the relatives, she was most attached to me. The relatives worried about the difficulties of balancing work and child care, especially doing it alone. But when I expressed my intention to raise my sister's precious daughter responsibly, no more objections were raised.
Uncle Mike, are we going to live together?
Looking up at me, Hannah asked, "Yes, we are. I might be unreliable, but we'll pull through together," I replied, patting her head. I decided then and there that I would do everything I could to make her happy. Our lives became hectic after that. I searched for a larger apartment for Hannah and me to live in, and we moved. I also found a daycare near our new home to replace the kindergarten she used to attend. Fortunately, we were able to transfer her to a daycare about 15 minutes from my office that had an opening. At first, Hannah cried when I dropped her off at the daycare, but gradually she got used to it. Still, the loss of her parents and the change in environment took a toll on her. She often woke up in the middle of the night crying. Each time, I gently hugged her and we fell asleep together. The hardest part was cooking. As a bachelor, I used to eat out often and was not good at cooking. But for Hannah's sake, I tried hard to cook child-friendly meals using recipe websites.
It doesn't taste like Mom's, but it's not bad.
Hannah, trying to be considerate in her own way, said, I decided to spend a lot of time with her on weekends, taking her to her favorite places like the zoo and the park. Thanks to these efforts, Hannah slowly began to smile again. But I was feeling worn out from juggling work and unfamiliar parenting duties. I had informed my office about Hannah, but I didn't want to cause them any trouble. So I often brought work home to make up for not being able to stay late. After putting Hannah to bed, I would finish my house chores and cut back on sleep to complete my work. Despite the exhaustion, I was desperate to spend more time with Hannah, who had recently started smiling again, so I worked hard every day. About 2 months of living like this passed. Then one day something happened. I had been feeling a little dizzy since the morning, but I had an important meeting scheduled first thing.
Uncle Mike, are you okay, eh? You don't seem well.
Hannah looked up at me worriedly when she woke up. I'm fine. Now, let's eat breakfast and get ready. I replied brightly and took her to the daycare. On my way to an internal meeting, I was hit by severe dizziness. The dizziness was accompanied by nausea, and I couldn't move. Luckily, my colleague, Samantha, noticed something was wrong and called for help. Thanks to her, I was taken to the company's infirmary, where the doctor told me that my dizziness was due to fatigue. I was told that my recent lack of sleep was likely the cause and was sternly warned to take care of myself even if I was busy. I knew that, but with so much to do, I couldn't help but feel frustrated. All I could do was apologize to the doctor. Since it was now lunchtime, I decided to rest in the infirmary. While resting, Samantha, who was concerned about me, visited the infirmary. As I froze up all of a sudden, I found myself apologizing. Samantha, with a look of concern on her face, began speaking.
Are you all right? I heard that you had taken in your sister's child.
Everyone in the office knew about my situation, so naturally, Samantha did too. Yeah, it's pretty tough juggling work and raising a kid on your own. I, who was completely worn down, ended up expressing my vulnerability to Samantha, who had shown concern for me. I slowly explained to Samantha how I ended up taking in my niece, Hannah, after my sister and her husband's unexpected accident. Samantha quietly listened to my story. Balancing work and childcare is hard, but I want to do my best for her. As I showed her a picture of Hannah, Samantha was slightly surprised and looked at the photo intently.
Your niece is 5 years old. That's such a cute age, isn't it?
With that comment, Samantha seemed to well up a little. I'm sorry for unloading all this on you. I'm feeling a bit better after taking a break, so let's get back to work. I hastily ended the conversation and decided to get back to work with Samantha. But when I returned to my desk, my boss suggested I take some paid time off and rest. He also advised me to go to the doctor, just in case. I felt awkward about taking time off in the middle of my work, but if I don't recover, I'll just be a burden to the company. So, I decided to take 3 days off, and Hannah was the happiest about this.
I'm so glad that Uncle Mike could pick me up early. You look so much better.
I always picked her up at the last possible moment each day, so I realized I must have made her feel lonely. Although I find my work rewarding, I began to wonder if I should consider switching jobs. Would it be better for Hannah if I chose a job that offered more flexibility with time? While pondering whether to consider changing jobs, I returned to work after my time off. During the morning meeting, I apologized to everyone for the sudden leave of absence, but my colleagues and superiors assured me not to worry. Everyone around me was so nice that I was filled with guilt. There's a sense of fulfillment in my job, but I started wondering if I had reached my limit considering the balance with child care. Feeling troubled, I spent the morning and ended up having my lunch break alone on the rooftop of the office building. Then, Samantha, who had been looking for me, showed up. And to my surprise, she said something that I didn't see coming.
You know, I've been thinking a lot since our conversation the other day. Would you let me help you out a little?
Caught off guard by Samantha's offer, I found myself lost for words. Seeing my reaction, Samantha continued speaking.
I bet it's a surprise to be asked this all of a sudden, but actually, I have a bit of a connection with your sister.
It turns out that Samantha and my sister had been following each other on Instagram. When she first joined the company, Samantha used Instagram to research popular baby items. During her research, she noticed my sister's post and decided to follow her. Thinking back, I recalled my sister really enjoyed photography after Hannah was born. Moreover, Samantha mentioned that she had been inspired by my sister's feedback for the development of a portable baby chair that won her the President's Award. Samantha saw a post from my sister saying how she wished she could easily enjoy dining out with her child, but it was always a concern whether the restaurants would have child-friendly seating. Samantha reached out to my sister via DM and even got her advice during the product development stage. Learning about the unexpected connection between Samantha and my sister left me speechless. Samantha wanted to tell me when she saw Hannah's picture the other day, but she couldn't.
Her post had stopped recently, and I never imagined that she had passed away.
Samantha spoke with a saddened expression, surprised and lost for words at my situation. Even so, I hesitated to let Samantha help with raising Hannah. I appreciate the offer, but I really can't put that on you. I tried to decline politely, but Samantha looked at me with a serious expression.
I don't just want to help because of our connection. I don't want to see you collapse again.
With that, Samantha shared her own story. Her parents divorced when she was young, and her mother raised her single-handedly. However, juggling work and childcare, her mother worked herself to the bone day after day. In the end, the strain became too much, and she passed away due to illness when Samantha was only 16.
I always regret not noticing something was wrong sooner. She was always smiling, pushing herself too hard. I see her in Mr. Jones every time she pushes herself too hard, she reminisced. Not that it's the only reason, but I see a lot of my mother in Mr. Jones' work. There's so much I can learn from her, and I want to continue developing useful products with her. So please don't overwork yourself. It's okay to rely on others more. I might not be the most reliable, but please let me help.
As she looked straight at me, Samantha said this with conviction. The fact that such a competent woman praised my work made me feel both proud and embarrassed, and my face turned red. Seeing my reaction, Samantha blushed a bit, too. After a while, we both burst out laughing. Suddenly, all the energy I had been pouring into my work and raising my child seemed to evaporate. In the end, I decided to take Samantha up on her offer. After work, Samantha would stop by my house to help out. She cooked, cleaned, and was genuinely a great help. Hannah, my daughter, quickly warmed up to Samantha, who would read her storybooks and play with her. There were even times when Hannah would share secrets with Samantha that she wouldn't tell me, and they would laugh together. Initially, I had a bit of a crush on Samantha, and every day that we spent together at my house, my feelings grew stronger. I'm shy and not very good at making advances. But seeing me like this, Hannah one day asked,
"Do you like Uncle Mike, Samantha? Do you want him to always be with you?"
At Hannah's sudden question, I broke out into a sweat. I apologized and tried to brush it off, but Samantha looked straight into Hannah's eyes and said,
Yes, I do like him. I want to be with him always, if that's okay.
Samantha confessed, her face turning red with embarrassment as she looked down. Caught off guard by her confession, I bowed my head deeply and replied, "Yes, please stay with us forever." Thus began my relationship with Samantha, and somehow I was able to manage both work and raising a child. I found out later that Hannah had actually known about Samantha.
Mommy had a person she wanted to introduce to Uncle Mike. She showed me a picture.
My sister, who followed Samantha on Instagram, apparently knew we worked at the same company.
But she told me to keep it a secret because she wanted to surprise Uncle Mike when they met.
Hannah, who was now very close to Samantha, hugged her tightly and smiled brightly. Seeing how attached Hannah had become, Samantha couldn't help but smile back. I believe this happy moment is all thanks to the connection my sister made for us. I can't express how grateful I am. With that thought, I made a promise to myself to make these precious people happy from now on. When I was 13 years old, my dad passed away from cancer. Though my mother has been a homemaker all the time because she was fragile ever since she was born, she had to start part-time job to support our family. I got permission from school and started a part-time job as a paper deliverer to help her. However, my mother is getting sick and being in and out of the hospital now. It's because she was juggling multiple jobs and overworked herself too much. As I turned 15 years old, I had a conversation with my homeroom teacher, Mr. Peterson, about my future.
Is there really no way for you to pursue higher education? You know there's a thing like student loan, right?
Mr. Peterson lamented and said that, if I don't work, my mother will overwork herself. I would rather get a job than pursue higher education.
That's a shame. With your grades, you could easily get into top schools.
I appreciated his words, and I actually loved studying either. Ever since I was a kid, I was interested in the human body and dreamed like, I will be the doctor in the future. However, reality was too harsh. Afterward, Mr. Peterson desperately searched for the place of employment for me, but it was nearly impossible to find a company that would hire a middle school graduate as a full-time employee in this day and age. After graduation, I ended up juggling multiple part-time jobs. While continuing my paper delivery job, I worked at a diner during the day and at a gas station at night. I didn't spare time even for sleep to work. However, I faced prejudice only because I didn't have a high school diploma and became a target of petty bullying.
Who the heck messed up the change?
The manager doing the mid-shift cash register reconciliation at the diner yelled out irritably.
Well, there's only one person who can't even do subtraction.
All eyes immediately turned to me.
Johnson, be more careful.
What? No, it was not me.
Don't talk back. Why don't you just go home and do some exercises for elementary school, huh?
The other staff members giggle with his words.
Practice multiplication while you take the bath.
Oh, come on. He can't even do subtraction. Multiplication is beyond impossible.
The laughter grew louder. I clenched my fists tightly and endured it. It wasn't as if this place was exceptionally terrible. During my late-night shifts at the gas station, they'd explain to me the meaning of every single word in the work manual. They even harassed me like that. These incidents led me to job hop from one part-time job to another. I know my patience is not enough, but being mocked every day by those clearly less competent than me, only because I didn't go to high school, was more than I could bear. The only one job I continued was that paper delivery job. The elderly couple who ran the newspaper stand were really nice, and they always cared about me since I started working for them in middle school. That lady always made handmade sandwiches for me when I came to pick up the morning papers. Of course, I was grateful and happy, but a major reason why I continued this job was because Professor Harris from NYU ordered the evening paper delivery. It was kind of weird delivering newspaper to professor's office in the university, but it was happy more than anything for me. I had never met Professor Harris who ordered newspaper, but just being able to step foot in a university without hesitation was like a miracle to me. It's a renowned university with a medical faculty, where lectures are given in various classrooms. Due to the season, all the windows and doors were left open, allowing me to discreetly watch any lecture. Among them, there was one professor whose lectures I really liked and really easy to understand even for a novice like me. Every time I delivered the evening paper, sneaking peeks into classrooms was the only thing that gave me a reason to live. I would spend my time like this until the very last moment before my night shift starts, then quickly hop on my bicycle. Most of the students walking around campus were wearing a lab coat, and they all have a hopeful look. It was so bright and made me feel sad at the same time. But there was nothing I could do about reality. All I could do now was going to the library with the knowledge I secretly got and relearn it until I was satisfied. I knew it was just for my own satisfaction, but if I didn't at least try to improve myself by expanding knowledge, I was afraid I would truly become the trash like I was treated by them. Then one day, something happened. While on my way back to the newspaper stand after morning delivery, I heard a small child crying. Looked around to see what it was, and then I found a girl who is about 3 years old. She was standing just before the crosswalk and crying like, "Mom, Mom." As I approached, I could see a woman, heavily pregnant, panting and sitting on the sidewalk, appearing to be in discomfort. I contemplated going over to help, but the thought of my plans afterward left me unsure. I was due to start my new part-time job today. I didn't want to know what they would say if I was late even on the first day. There were plenty of people around that woman. Someone will step in, right? That's what I thought as I was about to walk away. But I stopped in my tracks when I heard a little girl screaming, "Mommy's going to die." The people around her look like they feel bad about it, yet nobody paused to help. It was the peak of the morning rush hour, after all. Everyone must be thinking the same as me. Damn it, what am I doing? I blamed myself internally, stopping my bike and approaching that woman. "Hey, are you okay? Are you feeling unwell?"
Yes. It feels like my head is splitting.
She managed to say that, and then she's bowing her head and covering her mouth with a towel. A headache. If I remember correctly, I've read somewhere that the woman who is pregnant can have headaches due to a sudden rise in blood pressure. I quickly looked at the woman's feet. Thankfully, there was no blood.
Could you call a taxi for me?
A taxi?
Yes. I need to go to my regular op/GYN.
I don't think that's a good idea. If you have a headache from a sudden increase in blood pressure, it's a dangerous situation for both of you and the baby. I'll call an ambulance immediately. I took out my phone.
But my water hasn't broken yet. It's not an emergency. Not good to call an ambulance,
she said, gasping for breath. The little girl who was crying nearby asked me, "Is Mommy okay? Mommy's not going to die, is she? It's all right. We're going to see a doctor right away, okay? What's your name?" I asked as gently and calmly as I could.
Sophie? Sophie Harris.
Okay, Sophie. I'm going to call the ambulance. Can you place this under your mom's bottom? I told her like that and took off my jacket. The woman started to say something, but I shook my head. Sophie took my jacket. I quickly dialed 911 and told them the address on a nearby pole. They're coming right away. Don't move, just stay as you are and lean on me, okay? I gently tilted her body towards me, trying to make her as comfortable as possible. Then, one woman said, "Here, you can use this if you want." She draped a blanket over her belly. "Oh, thank you so much." I was happy and I smiled at that woman without thinking. It is because I was so frustrated with everyone ignoring this situation. She was wearing a high school uniform.
It's fine. It's just something I was using during class. It's pretty worn out. You can just throw it away after this.
After saying that, this girl was going to leave, but she stopped, turned back and said, "You know, you're amazing. I feel kind of ashamed of myself." Then she left with a small smile. I was taken aback by her sudden words, but I was happy. Then, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. I got into the ambulance together when it arrived, and I held Sophie's hand the entire way. When we arrived at the hospital, that woman was taken to the treatment room. A nurse asked me, "Are you a family member?" And I replied, "No, I was just passing by." Then Sophie shouted, "This man helped my mom."
That's right. You're in good hands with this kind gentleman here. Now, let me contact your father.
Then Sophie shaking her head and replied, "Daddy is working far away. That's why I'm always with my grandpa." The nurse nodded and turned to me. "The woman is Ms. Mackenzie Harris. I'll try to contact her father. I'm sorry to ask this, but could you take care of Sophie until then? The part-time job came into my head, but it's already late anyway." I nodded in agreement, sure. So I waited for her father to come down here. I wondered if she was okay. Though worried, there was nothing more I could do. I tried to distract Sophie with some small talk while we waited for the treatment of her to finish. "Excuse me, are you the one who helped my daughter?" Looking in the direction of the voice, I saw a man who is wearing suits and about like 50s.
Grandpa!
Sophie exclaimed and ran to that man. He caught her in a comforting embrace, then turned to me and bowing his head.
"Thank you so much. You calling the ambulance probably saved her life."
Looking at me, the man seemed to recognize me.
"Wait a second,"
he said, with a puzzled expression. I also felt like I had seen him somewhere before, so I looked at his face.
"She is out of danger now. I just spoke to Miss Mackenzie. She told me that you responded very effectively. Are you by any chance a medical student?"
I blushed at his question. "No, not at all. I just read some books, that's all. I didn't even graduate from high school and work part-time jobs." Then that man sat next to me and smiling.
"Don't be so modest. I have no students who listen to my lectures as attentively as you do. You are truly a med student."
Upon hearing this, I exclaimed, "Oh, this man was the professor who gave the lectures I always secretly listened to. Did you know I was listening? That's embarrassing." I couldn't raise my head. I worried that he thought my knowledge was childish.
"I didn't notice. A student as enthusiastic as you is rare these days. I was deeply moved. I thought you were a student from another school."
"I'm sorry. I'm just a part-time worker. I haven't even been to high school.
Would you mind telling me the reason why? I can't imagine you didn't further your education because you dislike learning.
I explained to him everything that had happened until now. Sophie, she is completely relaxed now and was dozing on the professor's lap, nodding several times during my story. The professor remarked with apparent admiration,
So, it's thanks to the evening paper what I ordered that we could meet with an interesting coincidence.
Yes, I didn't know that the professor whose lectures I loved to listen to was the same Professor Harris to whom I delivered the evening paper. At this, Professor Harris nodded. At that moment, the treatment room's door opened and the nurse said the procedure is over. Please come in. I stood up and said, all right, I leave now. I'm truly glad that both Ms. Mackenzie and the baby are safe. Holding my hand, and Professor Harris said thank you. We'll speak about my gratitude later, and walked into the treatment room. Sophie kept turning around and waving at me. As expected, I lost my job on the first day. But I felt satisfaction from the bottom of my heart. The next day I went to deliver the evening paper to the professor's office as usual. Professor Harris was seated and waiting for me.
Today, I thought you might take a test. It's a simple test of 3 subjects. Would you be up for it?
He handed me 3 printed sheets. I was surprised, but also I was interested in it. So I took a seat and tell him I would love to. The questions were on 3 subjects: English, math, and national language. At a glance, it looked like a middle school level test. When he asked me how long it would take, I replied, an hour is enough. He satisfied with my answer and left the room. It had been a while since I had taken a test last time. I felt a rush of nostalgia and happiness, and I finished the test in no time. I had always loved the middle school textbooks and read them again and again every day. The professor came back and graded my paper.
All perfect scores. Impressive.
I felt a bit shy as he expressed his surprise. Well, they were just middle school questions.
Indeed, they are primarily middle school level, but they are actually part of this year's GED test.
GED?
Yeah, it might be more familiar if I call it the exam for getting qualification to take university entrance exams. It's the exam for folks who haven't finished high school, but still want to apply for college.
Oh, even so, what was this all about? I must have had a wondering look on my face. The professor chuckled heartily.
My apologies. I skipped ahead with my explanation, but I needed to know your academic level before I could propose anything. Sorry for testing you without any context.
No problem, sir. So, what's the proposal?
Yes, Johnson. Would you consider working with me, studying for your GED and applying to medical school?
Suddenly proposed, I was left speechless.
The job is miscellaneous work, but you can read any of the books here and I'll make sure you get access to the university library too. I'll pay you 3 times more what you're making at your current part-time job, so I'd like you to quit and focus on your studies. And of course, I'll be the one teaching you. What do you think about it?
Even when asked for my opinion, I was still struggling to understand the situation. Yet, I vaguely understood that an incredible stroke of luck had just knocked on my door.
Surely the fact that you saved the lives of my daughter and my infant is a factor. But I was truly moved by your story, John. In this day and age, it's rare to come across a young man with such fervor for learning. I don't want to overlook this joyous encounter. Would you allow me to take you under my wing?
There was no dishonesty detected in the professor's passionate speech. Joy slowly filled my entire being, and I was reduced to tears. Are you really okay with this?
Absolutely. But be warned, I'm tough, okay? Are you up for it?
I'll never forget the warmth of the professor's hand as he patted my back. I'd be honored, I shouted, wiping away the overflowing tears. Afterward, I passed the GED test and enrolled at the NYU where Professor Harris teaches. Incredibly, as the top performer in the test, I was granted a full scholarship under the university's special merit-based program. Thanks to the tutoring job that the professor introduced to me, my life has become stable and I've finally managed to give my mother a much-needed break. It felt dreamlike, given the miraculous sequence of events. Walking around campus in my white coat, I wonder if I'm shining brightly toward the future, just like the students I used to look up to.
Hey, Johnson, over here.
The one waving and shouting was Kathy, studying in the nursing department. There was one more unbelievable miracle. The high school girl who had lent a blanket to Ms. Mackenzie, inspired by that incident, chose to pursue a career in healthcare, and here we've bumped into each other again. As Kathy and I walk side by side, we discuss the future of healthcare. If you don't give up, opportunities will always come. I too aspire to be someone who can save lives, just like Professor Harris. My mother gave birth to me out of wedlock and was disowned by her parents, forcing her to leave home. She realized that by using systems like food stamp, TANF, she could manage to get by, even though we were poor, so she chose not to work. Our neighbors were a couple with a son who was bedridden from birth, unable to walk or speak well due to his illness. Since the neighbor lady stayed at home to care for her son, my mother, seeing an opportunity, would leave me, still a young child, with them for about 2 hours while she went gambling. Of course, she never said she was going out to gamble. She always came up with some reason, like she had a doctor's appointment or had to go to the city office. Sometimes she left me there for over 4 hours, and when the neighbor lady expressed concern, my mother simply stopped leaving me there, saying, "It's fine." After that, I started staying home alone. I didn't go to kindergarten, so I had no friends and no one to talk to. When I went to the park alone, I always saw the children who had brought their mothers, and that made me feel jealous. The neighbor lady noticed my circumstances and approached me in the park and took me to her home. For me, who only eats instant foods or some breads from the supermarket, the foods she made were warm and delicious. She listened kindly to my stories, which made me very happy. Her son, John, was 5 years older than me.
John, our little friend Adam is here. Isn't that nice?
She called out, and John waved his hands to express his joy. That somehow made me happy too.
John has no friends. If you had any time, would you come and play again?
I nodded vigorously to her words. As a kid, I was happy. It was not because she pitied my poverty and sympathized with me, but because she invited me as a friend of her son. And so, I started visiting their house from time to time, enjoying their meals and talking to John. When I started elementary school, I finally started going to school for the first time in my life. My classmates had already learned to read and write, and could do calculations, as they had gone to preschool or kindergarten. Compared to them, I knew nothing and had to start learning from scratch. I was teased for being stupid and felt sad. I was sad and depressed, thinking about why I was different from everyone else. Regardless of my test scores or the teacher's comments that I needed more education at home, my mother continued gambling every day. It was more than just a hobby, and it had become an addiction. It was obvious even to everyone. Even when we were shopping together, she would stop as soon as she saw something related to gambling. She would walk in a daze towards it, look at it, and tells me to go home, then she goes gambling. Whenever she saw numbers while shopping, she would remember gambling and become restless. She would hand me the shopping bag and say, "I'll be back later," then head off to play. Even when watching TV at home, if a gambling commercial came on, she would react and say, "I'll be back in a bit," then leave. I was scared of my mother because she seemed to be controlled by something. That night, I woke up to the sound of crackling flames, smoke, and a strange smell. Fire was raging. "It's on fire." Looking around, my mother was nowhere to be found. It seemed that she had gone out to play while I was sleeping. My heart was pounding. Fear of death approaching made my entire body shake. At that moment, the face that came to mind was not my mother's, but the neighbor lady's. I mustered up the courage to run out of the house and rang the doorbell of the neighbor's house and pounded on the door.
"What's the matter? This late at night?"
John's father, who opened the door, wasn't angry but looked worriedly at my face. "Sir, fire. Our house is on fire." I couldn't explain well because I was panicked, but he just nodded at me, instructed me to wait there, and headed to my house. The lady who had gotten up held me tightly with a worried expression on her face.
"It's on fire. Call 911. We need to evacuate."
He came back quickly, shouted out, and I helped the lady put John in his wheelchair and we ran out of the house. Concerned that the elevator might stop, he carried John on his back down the stairs, while the lady and I carried the folded wheelchair from behind. Fire trucks arrived within 5 minutes and started firefighting immediately. I watched in disbelief as flames billowed from my house. Suddenly, a shrill yell echoed from behind me.
"Adam, what the hell have you done?"
My mother, who had come back from gambling, was so flustered and ran up to me.
"Do you have any idea how much this fire is going to cost us in damages? Don't mess around."
She grabbed me by the collar, hysterically yelling and shaking me violently. Then her hand was brushed off.
"Mrs. Summers, you're the one who should be blamed here. Leaving your son alone late at night. What were you even doing? Instead of blaming your son, you should be thankful he's safe."
John's father stood in front of me, vehemently condemning my mother.
"I don't need any advice from you."
My mother glared at him, her face twisted in frustration. Further investigation revealed that my mother had left an electric heater on when she left the house, which had set a nearby blanket on fire. Thankfully, due to a quick response, only our house was affected by the fire. It was a grateful for small mercies. Even though my mother delivered a parting shot like that, she had nowhere else to go, so we both ended up staying at the neighbor's house for a while. One day, when I came home from elementary school, my mother was sitting across from a stranger, talking. "Hey, who's that?" John's mother gave me an uncomfortable look and told me it was a person from CPS. But at that time, I didn't know what that meant or implied.
"We've determined that you lack the ability to raise your son properly, so we will be taking him into our care and placing him in an orphanage."
I heard their words and froze. I didn't fully understand the complexities of the situation, but I knew I was about to be separated from my mother and live somewhere far away.
"Initially, I didn't plan to have a kid. Just take him."
I felt a lump in my throat and my eyes stinging at my mother's muttered words. I knew my mother didn't like me, but I believed that there should be some bond between us because we shared the same blood. I just wanted to believe. Then suddenly, John's mother broke in.
"Are you even a mother?"
It was the first time I had seen her showing such a fierce and emotional.
"What? I just told the truth. I bet you're envious of me for having a healthy child, while yours is disabled. But to me, he's just a burden. If it weren't for him, I would be so much freer."
My mother's words were cut off by John's mother's resounding slap.
"I will raise Adam. I won't even let him go to an orphanage. My husband and I will raise him with love."
The CPS staff, who was taken aback, intervened.
If you wish to adopt him officially, please let us know. We can guide you through the process.
After that, when John's father came home, we all sat down for a serious discussion, and it was decided that I would be adopted by them. The day my mother left the house, without a glance in my direction, she walked out the front door. My mother was asked to pay $5,000 for the fire damages, but she said she had no money, so John's father stepped in and paid for her. But everyone knew that she would never repay that money.
I'm sorry, Adam, that we had to take you away from your mother.
She apologized with a regretful face, so I shook my head. If it wasn't for you two, I might not be alive right now. I'm happy that you're my family. Hearing this, John's father wiped away tears and knelt down to my level.
Right, we're already a family. You have nothing to worry about.
Despite not moving or changing schools, news that I had been adopted by my neighbors spread quickly. Not only that, but rumors about my mother's gambling addiction and the fact that they had a disabled child also spread, and I became a target of ridicule and bullying. But I didn't let it get to me. I was grateful to John's mother and father, who had given me clean clothes, a safe home, and a family who treated me with love, all of which were a stark contrast to my previous life. I studied hard to make them proud, found friends who accepted me, and started to enjoy school. I began to call them Dad, Mom, and Brother, because I wanted to be a real family. After my dad and mom expressed their surprise and their eyes grew wide, they hugged me joyfully and called me Adam. This was the first time someone had held me so tightly and warmly like this. I had daily conversations with my older brother about school, friends, games. I often showed him a book of ocean photographs because he was thrilled when I showed him photos of the sea I took before. My brother especially loved a photo of a particular beach in California, and he would become excited and convey his joy by moving his arms and legs every time he saw it. "I'll take you to this beach someday," I told him. My words excited him even more, and he started flapping his arms and legs, which earned a reprimand from our mother. As I started to take care of my brother and transport him to the hospital, I began to dream of working at a facility for the disabled. It's a harsh reality to face, but I know our parents will pass away someday. If that happened and I was at home taking care of my brother, I wouldn't be able to support him enough. So, I thought it would be best to work at a facility for the disabled and have my brother looked after there. However, my brother passed away the year I started high school. Our parents had been told at his birth that he would not be alive until 20, so they were somewhat prepared. But that didn't lessen the pain of loss. Seeing our mother sit still in my brother's room, our father repeatedly looking through my brother's photo album, I understood how deeply they were grieving his loss. I felt a profound regret that I hadn't been able to do anything for my parents or my brother. After that, I graduated from a technical school specializing in care and started working at a facility for the disabled. Even after my brother's death, my desire to reduce the burden on families with disabilities and make their lives a little easier hadn't changed. The month after I received my first paycheck, I took my parents to California. That was the beach I had promised to take my brother to someday. An emerald green sea stretched out on both sides of the long bridge that seemed to continue forever. Standing in front of the view from the beach, I held up a portrait of my brother. "We've come to the beach you wanted to visit, big bro," I said. My mom let out a sob and my dad choked up. "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. I couldn't fulfill my brother's dream while he was alive. I couldn't repay my debt to you guys. As I apologized through my tears, my mom took my hand.
That's not true, Adam. Thanks to you, our son was able to fulfill many dreams.
As I looked at them in confusion, my dad continued.
John couldn't go to school for the disabled and didn't know what school was like. We felt sorry for John and couldn't talk about school. When we heard you were talking to John about school, we realized we were wrong.
My father explained how my brother could imagine himself going to school, making friends, studying, and enjoying student life through my stories.
I'm sure he's in heaven right now, flapping his arms and legs with joy, knowing that you've remembered and brought him here.
The image of my brother doing just that brought a smile to my face.
Thank you for becoming his brother. Thank you for becoming our son. Adam, you are also making our dream come true. The dream of seeing our son grow up.
My dad nodded in agreement with my mom's words.
Ever since we adopted you, no, from the moment we met you, Adam, you've been our savior.
My dad added. I couldn't stop the tears. Blood ties didn't matter. These people who had raised me with such love were my true parents and family. 5 years later, I married a woman I worked with at the same facility, and we had a daughter.
I never imagined I'd get to see my son get married, let alone hold a grandchild. I'm so happy.
My wife, Catherine, is listening to my mom's words with a smile. She had been left at an infant home after her birth and raised in an orphanage, so she didn't know her biological parents. After hearing about her background, my parents told her, from now on, think of us as your real parents. My wife nodded, tears streaming down her face. This scene reminded me of when I was adopted. Today, we came to visit my brother's grave. Big bro, this is your niece, Hannah. You've got a niece now, I told him. Seeing my brother's grave, Hannah giggled with delight. I am incredibly grateful to have met my parents and brother, who accepted me and gave me a place to belong. Along with my new family, my wife and daughter, I vowed to repay my parents not only for what I owe them but also for what I couldn't give back to my brother.